This lesson really focuses on what to do when you have your angle other than 1 and you need to kind of work with it. Or how do you shrink that angle? How do you increase that angle? That kind of stuff. That's what we're going to be doing in this next lesson today and then the one after today. Okay? Well, if you look closely at this, what you're doing here is like with number 1 is you have sine of 2t. And what we want to do is look on the right how it shrinks to a single t. Okay? The goal with this formula is anytime you want to shrink any of your angles by half, that's what these formulas do. So note right here, we want to use these formulas when you decrease your angle by half. So if over here, like let's say you were given a sine of 6t, then half of 6t is 3t. And so what the formula would be 2 sine of 3t cosine of 3t. So it's almost like this. You have sine of an angle, it's always going to be 2 sine of an angle cosine of an angle. And what goes in these blanks on the left is, let's say if we put a 12t over here or a 12 theta, then what's going to be here is 6 theta and 6 theta. If you have, let's just say even theta, well, half of theta would be theta over 2 there and theta over 2 there. So the sine's there, the 2 sine stays there, and the cosine stays there. The only thing that changes throughout these formulas are just the angle sizes, and that's everything. Okay? Well, when you want to decrease an angle that has with sine, you only have one formula. But when you want to deal with cosine, you actually have 3 formulas. And which one you're going to go with depends on really on the context of your problem. Well, speaking of problems, why don't we go ahead and get into this first one, and you can see what I mean as far as trying to decide which of the cosines do you go with. Okay? I'm going to kind of leave this top screen up here because we're about to pull it here in 1 second. But on this top screen, if you can kind of see that what we're doing here is it shows the 3 possible ones. If you're going to shrink cosine of 2t, you can either go with this formula, or that one. Okay? So in the context of this first problem right here, it says we want to find cosine 2t, and what's given to us is just cosine t. So if I want to find cosine 2t, and all I want to do, and without having to kind of find all other kinds of information, I just want to utilize this one thing, which one should we go with? Well, this first one uses both cosine and sine. The second one uses just cosine, and the third one uses just sine. Well, if I'm given cosine, then obviously I just want to go with the one that just uses cosine, making my life so much easier. So we're going to go with cosine of 2t is equal to 2 cosine squared t minus 1. Alright, so let's come down here and actually work the problem. Okay, so cosine of 2t is 2 times cosine of t, which is negative 5/13 squared, minus 1. Okay, so it's 2 times 25 over 169 minus 1, or it's 50 over 169 minus 1. So finishing this up, cosine of 2t is, let's see, 50 minus 169, so be a negative 119 over 169. And there's my answer for what cosine of 2t equals. Okay? Going on to the next example. I have tangent of 3t is 3/4, where our angle 3t is in quadrant 3. We want to find sine of 6t. Well, sine of a 6t, notice what we're going from a 6t, and the information they give us is a 3t, which is exactly half, so that's good. And our formula says for sine of 6t is 2 sine of half that angle, so 3t, and then cosine of half that angle, which is 3t. Okay, so if out of all of this, I have 2. I need to figure out what sine of 3t is and then cosine of 3t. So how can I get sine or cosine if I'm given tangent? So let's think. I know that one of those very first identities, I'll come over here and do some side work, the infamous side work. I know that tangent squared 3t plus 1 is secant squared 3t. Okay, so tangent's 3/4. If I square 3/4, we'll get secant. So 9/16 plus 1 is secant squared. And 9/16 plus 1 would be a 25/16. And by the time I take the square root of both sides with my plus or minus, we'll get 5/4 is secant 3t. Well, secant relates to cosine by reciprocals, so the cosine would be a plus or minus 4/5. And since our angle 3t is in quadrant 3, which they tell us right there at the beginning, that in quadrant 3 cosine's negative, so we're going to go with negative. Okay, so let's go back to the original part of the problem. Let's fill this in. So we're still going to get sine of 3t, but now we know that cosine of 3t is a negative 4/5. Okay, so let's clean up over here on the right. Let's do some more side work. We have additional stuff. Okay, because if I know tangent, and now I know cosine, can I get sine if I know tangent and cosine? And I can do all of this without actually having to have a special identity, because we know that tangent of 3t is sine of 3t over cosine of 3t. Well, tangent of 3t is 3/4. Cosine of 3t is negative 4/5. So let's just multiply both sides by a negative 4/5. So we can clear that out of that bottom. This left side by a negative 4/5. Knock those off. So sine of 3t is just a negative 3/5. Simple as that. So now we have 2 times a negative 3/5 times a negative 4/5. Multiply all this together. Positive, negative, negative is positive. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times 4 is 24. 5 times 5 is 25. So my answer, by the time I've gotten all this done and complete, says that a sine of 6t is 24/25. And we can call that one done. Alright, let's go to the last one on this page. In this one, we want to know that if the cosine of x over 2 is 7/25, and our angle is in quadrant 4, we want to find the sine of x. Okay, so sine of x is equal to 2 sine of half of x is x over 2, and then cosine of half of that, which is x over 2. Okay, we know cosine, they give that to us, so 2 times the sine of x over 2 times the cosine of x over 2, which is 7/25. So all we have to do is figure out what sine is, and if I know cosine, I can definitely get sine by using our very first primary identity, where sine squared of x over 2 is going to be 1 minus cosine squared of x over 2. So sine squared of x over 2 is 1 minus 7/25 squared. Okay, so 1 minus 49 over 625. And the difference between 49 and, let's see, that's 576, I believe, over 625. So I have sine squared of x over 2 is equal to the square root of 576, which is 24 over 25. And by the time you do the square root and everything, that says sine of x over 2 is going to be plus or minus, I already did the square root, now that I'm thinking about it. Okay, so we can take off that square there. So do we go plus or minus 24 over 25? So is it the plus or is it the minus? Well, in quadrant 4, sine, which is our y values, are definitely negative. So let's take away the plus sign, let's go with the minus sign. Okay, so going back to the original part of the problem so we can wrap this up. So 2 times the sine of x over 2, which is negative 24 over 25, times 7 over 25. Okay, so we have, this looks like 2 times negative 24, and then times 7 should give us negative 336, and 25 times 25 is 625. Circle that up, call that problem finished.